My sister Nia stood at her baby shower 7 months pregnant, one hand resting proudly on her perfectly round belly, while the other held a champagne glass filled with sparkling cider. The late afternoon sun poured through the country club's tall windows, catching the sparkle of her diamond wedding ring as she lifted her glass for a toast. "At least my baby will have a father," she announced, her gaze locking directly on me. That smile she wore polished and practiced since childhood appeared sweet to everyone else, but I knew it as a blade hidden behind sugar. The room erupted in applause. 40 guests clapped as if she had just revealed a cure for cancer, not taken a direct shot at me and my son. My mother Donna stood from her chair, nodding along with approval, as though Naya's cruel jab were some sort of motivational speech. Beside me, my 10-year-old son, Devin, slipped his small hand into mine beneath the tablecloth. I felt the tremor in his fingers, not of fear, but of something harder to define. What happened next would make everyone in that room wish they had kept their mouths shut, because my quiet, observant son, the boy they had already written off as a casualty of a broken home, was about to drop a truth bomb that would shatter their perfect illusion into 1,000 irreparable shards. My name is Ree. I'm 35 years old, and I work as a marketing manager at a tech startup downtown. For the past 2 years, I have raised my son alone. It wasn't my first choice, but now I wouldn't trade it for anything. My ex-husband, Troy, disappeared into his gambling addiction, draining our son's college fund and maxing out credit cards I didn't even know existed. When the divorce was finalized on a rainy Tuesday in March, I walked out of the courthouse breathing as though for the first time in years. Devin is the light of my life. At just 10, he carries the wisdom of someone far older. He devours books, builds entire cities out of Legos, and notices things most adults overlook. His teachers call him gifted. His counselor says he's remarkably well-adjusted. My family calls him unfortunate. Nia, my younger sister, is 32 and has always embodied everything I am not. She married Mike straight out of college in a wedding that cost more than my yearly salary, and ever since her life has looked like a curated Instagram feed: the pristine colonial house in Westchester, the shiny new SUV, the maternity wardrobe worth more than my mortgage. Every Christmas, she sends out cards featuring matching sweaters and polished smiles, proof of her flawless image. Mike, her 34-year-old husband, owns a chain of real estate offices. He is the kind of man who wears khakis and polo shirts to family dinners, casually dropping phrases about market trends and investment opportunities, calling everyone buddy or sport in a way that always makes my skin crawl. He loves to remind us all that he built his empire from nothing, that he knows what it takes to win. My mother eats it up. Donna, 58, never forgave me for divorcing Troy. In her mind, women should endure no matter the circumstances. Appearances mattered more than truth in the house where Nia and I grew up. We smiled even when we were breaking inside. To this day, Mom introduces Nia as her daughter, the wife of a successful businessman, and me as her other daughter. My father, Carl, 60, has perfected the art of quiet withdrawal. He avoids conflict at all costs, nodding along to whatever my mother says while hiding behind his newspaper or golf game. He once taught me to throw a curveball, but he never taught me how to stand up to the people who were supposed to love me most. That baby shower was supposed to be Nia's crowning moment, the celebration of her perfect marriage producing its perfect offspring. The decorations could have been pulled straight from a magazine, pink and gold accents everywhere, glittering letters spelling out, "A little princess is on the way," an elaborate candy bar, and a cake almost too perfect to cut. The guest list had been carefully curated to reflect and validate her flawless story. But what no one realized was that the people most eager to point fingers usually have the darkest secrets to hide. And sometimes it takes a 10-year-old boy to pull the curtain back. I should have known the baby shower would be a disaster the moment my mother called me 3 separate times that morning. The first time was at 7 while I was packing Devon's lunch. The second interrupted the only 10 quiet minutes I had in the shower. The third came while I was wrestling Devon into his good polo shirt, the one without the faint stain on the collar I prayed no one would notice. I'm serious," Mom said through the phone speaker as I smoothed the fabric against my son's shoulders. "This is Nia's special day. She's been planning it for months. Just smile, give your gift, and try to blend in." Blend in. That had always been my assigned role in this family. Fade quietly into the background while Nia sparkled in the spotlight. It had been 2 years since my divorce, but to my mother, it was still the defining scandal of my life. The thing that meant I had to be contained, hidden, managed. The Rosewood Country Club looked like something out of a movie as we pulled into the lot my 8-year-old Honda Civic parked in a line of Mercedes and BMWs. Devon noticed too, though he said nothing, simply straightening his polo and retrieving the gift bag from the back seat. "You remembered the card, right, Mom?" he asked, with his serious little voice. I smiled at him, though the weight in my chest was heavy. "I remembered everything, baby. We're going to be perfect guests." The moment we stepped into the garden room, it felt like stepping into a Pinterest board come to life. Pink and gold balloons arched over a mountain of gifts, mason jars wrapped in lace overflowed with roses, and baby's breath and glittering letters announced the arrival of the perfect princess-to-be. Elaborate centerpieces glowed from each table, the kind of extravagance that could cover my grocery bill for weeks. 40 guests were already mingling their voices, blending into a chorus of polite laughter and shallow conversation. I recognized faces immediately. Mrs. Peterson from Mom's church in her Sunday best, Mike's mother Gloria, loudly proclaiming her excitement about becoming a grandmother. Nia's book club friends clustering near the windows in sundresses that seemed accidentally coordinated. I leaned toward Devon, whispering our agreement. "Remember what we talked about. If anyone says something that makes you uncomfortable, squeeze my hand twice and we'll step outside?" He looked up at me with those deep brown eyes and nodded. "I know, Mom. We're okay." And somehow he made me almost believe it, though. Just last week, he had asked why his cousin would be born with something he didn't have a dad. Our family dynamic had always been lopsided, tilted by endless comparisons I never asked for. Nia was the straight A student who made honor roll without effort. I was the one who stayed up past midnight just to scrape by with B's. She went to prom on the arm of the football captain, a princess in silk. I went with a group of friends leaving early to watch movies. She had the lavish wedding with 200 guests at this very country club. I had a courthouse wedding with only parents and a sister-in-law for witnesses. But what the family photos never showed was that I had been happy once, happier, I suspected, than Nia ever was, at least until Troy's addiction dragged me under. Still, I carried the pride of knowing that when love turned poisonous, I found the strength to walk away. That had to count for something, even if no one in my family saw it that way. Mom greeted us at the door with her polished smile, the one she used for church socials and family portraits. Her pale yellow dress was new, her hair styled professionally, and she hugged Devon warmly before leaning close to me. "Try to be happy for your sister today," she whispered. "This is her moment. Don't ruin it with any of your drama." My drama. As if being a single mother was some sort of performance rather than survival. I bit my tongue, forcing myself to nod as Devon and I followed her inside. The trouble truly began during the gift opening, though in hindsight, I should have known from the moment Nia settled herself into a ribbon-decorated throne-like chair at the front of the room. She glowed in her designer maternity dress, a piece she'd casually mentioned had cost $800 when she showed it to me the week before. Mike hovered behind her, his hands firmly resting on her shoulders, his smile picture perfect as he played the role of doting husband. Each gift she opened was announced, displayed, and admired. A silver box with a bow from Cousin Janet, a $1,000 stroller from her book club, a designer breast pump from Mike's mother. It wasn't just a shower, it was a parade of wealth, each gift more extravagant than the last. And then she reached mine. "This one's from Nia," announced, her tone shifting ever so slightly, the way a hostess might prepare a room for something less than impressive. She tugged at the tissue paper piece by piece until at last she pulled out the quilt I had spent 2 months sewing, working on it every night after Devin went to bed. She held it up between 2 fingers as if it might stain her dress. "How crafty," she said, drawing out the word until it sounded like an insult. "You always were good with your hands. Had to be raising Devin alone and all." The room rippled with nervous laughter, the kind people use when they don't know if cruelty is meant to be a joke. I felt Devin freeze beside me, his fork suspended halfway to his mouth. "Each square has a different nursery rhyme," I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. "I embroidered them by hand. The back is organic cotton, hypoallergenic." "How thoughtful," Nia said, folding the quilt without care and setting it aside far from the growing pile of approved expensive gifts. "Well, we can't all shop at Bergdorf's. Some of us have to be creative with our limitations." Devin cleared his throat. "Actually, handmade gifts are often more valuable than store-bought ones," he said quietly. His voice was small, but it carried across the room. "That quilt probably took over 100 hours to make. At minimum wage, that's worth more than most of these presents." Mike threw his booming business laugh into the air. "Look at the little mathematician. But life isn't about hours, sport, it's about what you can actually provide." That was when my mother chimed in from her honored seat beside Nia, her voice sharp enough to pierce glass. "Some women just make bad choices," she said, looking directly at me. Thank goodness Nia learned from her sister's mistakes. She waited for the right man, built a proper foundation. Not everyone has that kind of wisdom. Mrs. Peterson from church nodded eagerly. "It's so important for children to have both parents. Studies show kids from broken homes struggle with everything: school, friendships, relationships. My grades are better than most kids in my class," Devin said firmly, his voice stronger now. "I'm in the gifted program." "Of course you are, sweetie." Nia cooed, her tone syrupy with condescension. "You're doing the best you can with your circumstances." "But children need male role models, someone to show them how to be strong, how to provide." She stood then, cradling her belly with both hands, her voice rising theatrically. "At least my baby will have a father. Someone to teach him how to throw a ball, how to tie a tie, how to be a man. Someone who will be there for every birthday, every baseball game, every important moment." The room burst into applause, 40 adults clapping for the cruelty of a woman who had just told a 10-year-old boy that his life was somehow less incomplete, broken. "Some of us are doing just fine." I managed, my voice trembling with controlled rage. "Of course you are," Sweetie Nia replied with a smirk that made my skin crawl. "Devin seems adjusted enough considering." "It's not his fault his father chose gambling over family," Mike added, his poison leaning forward with his smirk. "But hey, the kid's got me now, right? I can teach him all those things Troy never stuck around for. Take him to a ball game, show him how a real man provides." My chair scraped against the floor as I stood desperate to leave before I said something that would burn every fragile bridge left in this family. "Come on, Devin," I whispered, reaching for his hand. But his hand wasn't there. He had already risen from his chair, his face shifting from hurt into something far stronger: determination. "Mom, wait," Devin said, his voice cutting through the clatter of silverware and side conversations. Every eye turned toward him as he stepped out from behind the table, moving with the quiet precision of someone far older than 10. He wove between crystal glasses and pink centerpieces until he stood at the very front right beside the towering stack of expensive gifts. At first, people smiled indulgently. They assumed he was going to say something sweet to his aunt, maybe even apologize on my behalf for my supposed bitterness. My mother leaned forward, beaming at him with condescension. "What is it, sweetheart? Do you want to say something nice to Aunt Nia about the baby?" Devin shook his head, his expression calm, but unyielding. "Actually, Grandma, I have a question." He turned toward Nia, his voice conversational, almost casual, though the weight in it pressed into every corner of the glittering room. "Should I tell everyone about Uncle Mike's other family?" The words detonated like dynamite in slow motion. Mike's face drained of color, his hand frozen mid-shake with one of his business associates. His carefully crafted mask of confidence shattered. "What are you talking about, buddy?" He stammered, trying for his signature laugh, but it cracked on the edges. "Kids say the funniest things, don't they?" Devin didn't smile. He didn't laugh. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, the one I'd given him for emergencies, the one he rarely touched. He held it up with the steady hand of a boy presenting a science project. "Last month, when you took me to that baseball game, remember you said we had to stop by your office first? But we didn't go to your office. We went to a house in Riverside, a blue house with a broken mailbox and a swing set in the front yard." The room went utterly still. Even the servers froze with champagne bottles suspended mid-pour. Nia's perfectly staged world hovered in silence, waiting to collapse. A lady named Brittany opened the door. Devin continued evenly. "She had brown hair and wore hospital scrubs. She's a nurse, and there was a little girl with her. She ran to you and called you Daddy." Gasps spread like wildfire. Mike tried again, his voice desperate now. "That's ridiculous. I was showing a client a house." The kid misunderstood. Devin's gaze never wavered. "She has your eyes, green with a brown spot in the left one, just like yours. She was wearing a frozen dress and light-up sneakers. She said, 'Daddy's home,' and you picked her up and spun her around. You gave Brittany an envelope of cash and told me it was our secret. You said men have responsibilities they don't talk about." Nia's hands flew to her belly, her face paling as cracks formed in her composure. "Mike!" she whispered, her voice trembling like shattered glass. Mike reached out toward Nia, panic clouding his once confident demeanor. "Baby, it's not what it sounds like." He pleaded, his voice no longer booming with authority, but thin and shaky, barely recognizable. He tried to step closer, but Nia recoiled, pressing her hands protectively against her belly, as if to shield her unborn child from him. The room, once filled with applause and shallow laughter, had descended into stunned silence. Devin's voice, steady and clear, sliced through the heavy air. "You've been visiting them every Tuesday. You told Aunt Nia you had late meetings, but I know, because you picked me up from school 3 times last month. We went there every time. Brittany called you her daughter's father. Her name is Cadence. She's 4. My mother bolted to her feet so fast her chair clattered backward onto the floor. "This is nonsense. He's a child making things up for attention," she declared, her face flushed with fury, but her voice shook beneath the weight of uncertainty. "I have pictures," Devin said, simply swiping across his phone screen with clinical precision. "Grandma, you always said smart people document everything." He turned the phone toward the room, showing photo after photo. Mike hugging a little girl with curly hair on the porch of a small blue house. Mike pushing her on the swing set, both laughing. Mike at a backyard barbecue wearing an apron that read "Dad's Grilling." The evidence was undeniable. Nia snatched the phone from Devon's hand, her eyes darting across the images. Disbelief hardened into rage, her breaths coming shallow and quick. 4 years, she hissed, her voice breaking. She's 4 years old. We've been married for 6 years. Mike, Nia, please let me explain. He begged, reaching for her arm, but she wrenched away with such force that the gift table toppled behind her. Boxes crashed to the floor, ribbons tearing the $1,000 stroller, tipping over the designer breast pump, scattering parts across the marble. Explain what? Nia screamed, her polished veneer gone, her voice raw and jagged. That you have another child. That you've been lying to me every single Tuesday for years. That you played perfect husband here, while building a second life somewhere else. Mike's mother, Gloria, staggered backward, her hands pressed to her face. Michael, no. No, tell me it isn't true, she wailed, her voice cracking like glass. But Nia was beyond hearing. She grabbed a crystal vase from the shattered gift table and hurled it at Mike. It missed him by inches, exploding against the wall in a shower of roses and water. The garden room was no longer a baby shower, it was a war zone. Guests backed toward the doors. Some whispered in shock, others raised phones to capture the carnage. My mother sat heavily in her chair, fanning herself uselessly with a shower program, her face pale as ash. Get out, Nia said suddenly, her voice low but sharp, the kind of voice that cut deeper than screaming. Get out, Mike. Now! Baby, think about our child. Mike begged, his voice breaking as he reached toward Nia with desperation. But she laughed, then a sound sharp and hollow, stripped of all warmth. You mean like you thought about Cadence, she spat. At least now my baby will have something in common with hers, a father who's a liar. Her words landed with brutal finality, and the room seemed to shrink around him. The staff began ushering stunned guests toward the exits, their polite smiles gone replaced by grim efficiency. Nia collapsed into sobs, mascara running down her face in jagged streams as she disappeared into the bathroom, with 2 of her friends trailing after her. The once perfectly staged celebration now looked like wreckage, overturned chairs, gifts in shambles, roses, and broken glass scattered across the floor. My mother paused on her way after Nia, but not before turning her sharp eyes on me. Did you know about this? She demanded, her voice trembling with accusation. Did you put him up to it? No, Mom, I answered, exhausted but steady. Unlike some people, I don't keep secrets that destroy families. I survive them. Her glare shifted to Devon, her face a storm of anger and disbelief. How could you do this to your aunt? How could you ruin her special day? Before she could say more, I stepped in front of my son, my body shielding his small frame. How could you? I shot back. He sat here listening while you all tore me apart, calling our lives incomplete, suggesting he was damaged because his father isn't here. And you want to blame him for telling the truth? Devon's eyes flicked between me and his grandmother, his young face shining with the painful maturity no child should carry. Uncle Mike told me not to say anything, because it would hurt Aunt Nia, he said softly. But Aunt Nia was already hurting Mom, and you were helping her grandma. At least when Dad left, he just left. He didn't pretend to be perfect while living a lie. The silence that followed was deeper than any before. It wasn't the silence of shock, it was the silence of truth settling into every corner of the room, undeniable and unmovable. 2 weeks later, Nia had moved back into my parents' house. Within a month, divorce papers were filed. Mike scrambled to salvage his reputation, but the evidence Devon had collected was too thorough, too damning. Brittany, the nurse in Riverside, revealed she had been told Mike was separated and planning to divorce, raising Cadence alone on promises that never came true. Family dinners looked different now. For one thing, They actually happen. Nia no longer laughs at my single motherhood, nor does she dismiss my struggles as cautionary tales. Instead, she asks questions tentative searching about raising a child alone, about surviving betrayal, about finding solid ground after the rug has been ripped away. Our mother has stopped making her sharp little comments about bad choices and broken homes. She has learned the hard way that judgment has a way of circling back, exposing the very things you most want to hide. As for Devin, he and I have only grown closer. That night after the baby shower, he asked me the question that lingered in the quiet darkness of his room, as I tucked him in, something he usually insisted he was too old for, but seemed to need that night. "Mom," he whispered, his voice small and uncertain. "Did I do the right thing?" I brushed the hair from his forehead, my heart aching with pride and tenderness. "You stood up for us," I told him. "You showed them that being a family like ours doesn't make us less. It makes us honest. It makes us strong." He nodded slowly, then said something I will never forget. "Uncle Mike had a father growing up. Dad had a father too, but they both turned into liars. Maybe having a dad isn't the important part. Maybe having someone who teaches you to tell the truth is." The baby shower became legend in our town. Whispers still rise in the grocery store aisles about how little Devin Matthews exposed Mike Harrison's double life at the Rosewood Country Club. But to me, it was something greater. It was the day my son taught a room full of adults that perfect families don't exist, that single mothers raise warriors, and that truth will always cut through even the prettiest lies. 2 months later, Nia gave birth to a beautiful baby boy she named Oliver. I was there in the delivery room holding her hand while she pushed, not because she deserved my presence, but because she needed it. The next day, her voice raw with exhaustion, she called me at work. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything." For all those years, I thought I had it figured out, that my life was perfect, and yours was the tragedy. "None of us have it figured out," I told her gently. "But Oliver has something more valuable than a perfect story. He has the truth, and he has you. Now Devin and Oliver are inseparable. My son, the protective older cousin, teaches him about dinosaurs and planets and builds Lego castles with him that stretch across my living room. Together, they prove what I always knew. Family is not measured by the presence of a father, or the sparkle of appearances, or the size of a house. It is measured in love, in honesty, in the courage to stay, and the integrity to show up. If this story touched you, if you've ever felt the sting of judgment, or the weight of being told your family was less than, I invite you to share this video so others can feel less alone. Leave a comment about your own experience, about the ways you found strength in unexpected places. And if you want to hear more stories of real families, real struggles, and the unshakable power of truth, please like, subscribe, and join us on this journey. Because in the end, it's not perfection that holds us together, it's authenticity.